So for people who are focused on fear and what it is, these type of abilities frighten people. Why? Because people are afraid of things they do not understand. It's a basic human instinct to fear the unknown. Death is the great unknown, right?
Yeah. Number one fear on the planet.
Number one fear on the planet. And so, oh my God, he's talking to spirits. That can't be. People are afraid. Using 20th and even better 21st century science to understand the human brain in coupled with quantum physics, we're now seeing that there is a logical scientific explanation not only for the existence of a soul but for spirit communication.
My guest today might look very familiar. He is Mark Anthony, a fourth generation science based evidential medium. And he has two books that have Pulitzer Prizes, a radio show called The Psychic Lawyer. He writes articles. He does so many things, but this is going to be a conversation you don't want to miss, because if you've seen him before, we are going to dig very deep and go into some topics that he doesn't always get to talk about. So Mark, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it. It's really nice to be here, and I've been looking forward to this interview with you.
I have been looking forward to this interview. I have been aware of you for many, many, many years. When I first lost my closest soulmate back in 2012, I began a real spiritual quest. And you know where I started? With mediums. And you were one of them. Because when you lose somebody on the other side, you begin to, you might know, all right, our soul goes on and I believe all of those things, but you want to search for them. And so I came across your name because of Dr. Gary Schwartz, who actually tests the virility and the efficacy of mediums and their ability to provide real evidential information for people, not just high level information. And so I feel that you have earned a lot of credibility based on the science that you have put into the mediumship, which makes us a lot less woo-woo. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. And people think that mediumship. The problem with mediumship is the history of mediumship has been filled with frauds. You can look back
Yep.
in the Victorian era during the age of spiritualism, and I'm not saying that there were not perfectly legitimate mediums then, but there was a lot of hucksters, with the knocking and the bells ringing and things flying around the room. And even today, and I'm not going to mention any names, I've witnessed some things that are not authentic whatsoever. But putting those people aside, the legitimate mediums, this is based on science. It's not hocus pocus. It's not magic. And I have spent my life as a medium and then as an attorney. And so as an attorney, I have to bring forth evidence. That's why I wanted to focus on evidential mediumship, bringing forth pieces of information transmitted to me by spirits to guarantee the authenticity of the contact. And in my law practice, I specialized, I was a prosecutor, then criminal defense, and I went into civil litigation. I did injury cases, and I focused very heavily on brain injuries. So when I left the practice of law and went into being a full-time medium, I kept realizing that there was a scientific basis for this: quantum physics, frequency, vibration. Okay, that's fine. But how do humans do this? Because we are a biomechanical machine. And then all my study of the human brain kicked in, and I started studying this. So there is also a human physiological basis that enables human beings to communicate and sense sense the presence of and communicate with spirits. So I put it all together. That's why I've written my 3 books, particularly Evidence of Eternity, and more recently the Afterlife Frequency, to explain this in great detail. So thank you, Lori, for asking about that.
Well, I think it's really important because I feel like the consciousness has been changing over the last few years. And as the frequency rises of the collective, we're now uncovering abilities that people haven't had before. You've had this ability, it's been in your family for a long time. Do you think that we're going to get to a place in our consciousness where everybody will be connecting to spirit more the way that you have been doing this?
The reason I'm smiling is, wow, we could really, really get very deep. That would be a very fascinating hypothesis. If all of a sudden everybody in the world is psychic to varying degrees, but let's say that everybody was on that page. That would also, though, assume that everybody's going to use their abilities for positive purposes. And at the risk of getting all Star Warsy, there's the light side of the Force, there's the Jedi Knights, which I would like to think I'm one of them, and then there's the dark side of the Force, because I've seen mediums who do use their abilities purely for profit, purely for making themselves a star. And of course I put myself out there, and I am on TV. I do a live stream show, The Psychic and the Doc, every week, and I'm in the public eye, but it isn't. That's not the be all end all. That's part of the journey. The focus of the journey is on the work. So if everybody became psychic, would that be wonderful? I tend to think it is, but then you have to look at human nature. For every Pope Francis, Mother Teresa, or Gandhi, unfortunately, we have 10,000 Vladimir Putins.
I love it. Okay, well, then I'm going to go to a different direction with this because there's new information that has come out. You may or may not be aware of it, but everybody's talking about the telepathy tapes. Have you heard of these?
I've heard of them, but I haven't been too focused on it. What's your take on it?
My take, I'm calling this the 4-minute mile of consciousness. I believe that these kids, these non-speaking autistic kids who are coming in, have come in very purposefully as almost a new evolution of humans with abilities to communicate telepathically. And the reason that this works is, to your point about what you just said about how many Vladimir Putins are compared to like a Gandhi or a Mother Teresa, is that these kids almost have they don't really have the ability to lie because communication is such an effort for them. They're more of a pure loving source coming closer to the creator, and they're coming in, I believe, to show us what's possible. And what's interesting is that if we're going to start having abilities to communicate telepathically, people are going to have to clean their thoughts up.
Wouldn't that be interesting? And
Wouldn't that be interesting?
well, that's the collective consciousness on the other side. And hold on, we may be getting ahead of ourselves, and I'd like to get to that, but let's take a look at this. I'm going to back up a bit to where you're talking about autistic children. And autistic people have been with us from the beginning of time. Um, and there's different people when they call it on the spectrum. There are some people like these children that have a difficult time communicating. Then there's people that are extremely high functioning. Probably Nikola Tesla would have, if he had been given a diagnosis, would have been Asperger's syndrome. Elon Musk, and I know he's in the news a lot and all that, but you can't deny the genius thing.
When you were talking, that's the name that came into my mind.
Yeah, because I remember when he was on Saturday Night Live, and he said, "I'm the first person on Saturday night to host Saturday Night Live who has Asperger's syndrome." Okay, but now when you look at somebody like Tesla, he was a real odd character. And for those of you who've seen The Big Bang Theory, the character Sheldon, who's the quirky, eccentric genius that's really hard to be around, his character was based on Nikola Tesla. Because, Sheldon, when he knocks on the door, it's like knock, 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 Leonard, knock, 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 Leonard, knock, 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 Leonard. Where Nikola Tesla would not enter a building unless he walked around it 3 times first. He would not stay in a hotel room unless the hotel room's number was divisible by 3. He was an insufferable companion. He was always insulting people's intelligence, generally because he was right. But the thing is, so many of the inventions in the background there, that sphere, that's called the Tesla sphere, because he invented that particular type of technology. But every time you plug something into the wall and it works, thank Nikola Tesla, because he invented alternating current. So there are
Right.
so many things that he did. Now, with autistic children, in our brain, we have 5 main brainwave frequencies. We have gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Gamma is when your brain is running at full throttle. That's when you're doing a calculus exam. You're on Final Jeopardy. I mean, your brain is just in overload. Beta, activities of daily living. That's the awake state, the conscious state. Alpha, for all of our listeners in Southern California, that's the groovy baby meditation state. I mean, I'm just being funny here, but that's when you begin to relax, either through meditation, you start to fall asleep. Then there's theta. Theta is dreamful sleep, restful sleep. Then there's delta. Delta, there's not a lot of brainwave activity going on. And initially, when delta was discovered, oh, well, nothing's happening there. Now we know this is when your body heals. Okay. That's why when you get really sick, you want to sleep. Why? Because your body is diverting energy into your immune system and you're healing. So you go into delta so that can happen. Now, it is on the alpha theta border, and all of these brainwave frequencies can be identified and quantified through EEG, electroencephalogram, also QEEG, quantitative electroencephalogram, and also positronic emission tomography. I've been subjected to all of those. My brain's been studied a lot by people who study this. And it's on the alpha theta border, which is around 8 hertz. And see, in
Okay.
our field, Lori, people are always about, got to raise my vibration. Actually, we're lowering it to 8 hertz between alpha and theta. And this is where psychic and mediumistic activity occur. This,
Is that what they found in your brain?
yeah, yeah. And this is also, it's very daydreamy. So like every medium I
Okay.
know will describe it as when you're communicating with a spirit, it feels like you slip into a daydream. Well, for most people, it takes hours to get to that point in the sleep state. And that is why, Lori, so many people have contact experiences with loved ones in spirit in the sleep state, because when you get to that 8 hertz, spirits are able to spot that. They adjust their frequency, you get an alignment, and there's the contact. And communication with spirits has been documented in scripture. I mean, think of all the Jacob's ladder, the dream where he sees angels ascending and descending, where God sends an angel to Joseph to say, hey, get Mary and Jesus out of here before Herod comes. I mean, we can go through Pharaoh having the dreams of the cows being devoured by skinny cows, and it's the prophet Joseph who uses his psychic ability to interpret the dreams. All right, so that's all fine, well, and good. But there's a theory that autistic children or autistic people, they're in that spacey, daydreamy state because they're stuck there on the alpha theta border. So in a sense, they are naturally psychic, and they've been called, historically retarded and stupid and all these horrible, horrible names, which only characterize the ignorance of the people insulting them, whereas they're at a brainwave frequency which makes them very psychic. Ergo, that would lend itself to the ability of telepathic communication with other people who are able to get their brainwave frequency to that same frequency. And he was
I'm so
really,
glad we're having this discussion. Like I mean, I've known some of these things, but I'm learning a lot from you. You really have understood and you're able to explain this in a way that makes so much sense. I love the science part of this, and I think a lot of people watching feel the same.
well, it's time for people to understand this. I mean, I get so many Christians saying it's working demons, working demons. It's like, well, then
Oh
you're
my
wrong.
gosh, if I had a dollar for every comment that had something like that in it.
But the thing is, those are the salad bar Christians, and they're not really
The
Christians.
salad bar
The
Christians.
salad bar Christians because they pick and choose what they want
Oh.
as opposed to looking at the entire document. Yes, there are passages in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. Mediums are not a god. Blah 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 blah. All right, if you go into Deuteronomy 18, it says don't consult with a spiritist or people who engage in witchcraft or communicate with the dead. All right, so what happens is they stop right there. You're evil, but being the psychic lawyer, I know that you must examine the entire document before rendering judgment. And going down to verse 22. And what it says in verse 22 is that how do we know a word that a prophet has spoken is not the word of God? If what the prophet says does not come true, it is not the word of God, which means if what the prophet, which is Bible speak for medium, is true, then it is the word of God. Now let's fast forward to the first book of Corinthians, chapter 12, verses 4 through 12. It gives a list of the gifts that God, okay, gives to all of us. And there's a whole list, and two of these gifts, one is prophecy, which is foreseeing future events, and the other one is discernment of spirits, which is spirit communication. And it says that these gifts are given by one in the same spirit, meaning God, okay? And we're supposed to do good with these. So for people who are focused on fear and what it is, these type of abilities frighten people. Why? Because people are afraid of things they do not understand. It's a basic human instinct to fear the unknown. Death is the great unknown, right?
Yeah. Number
Yeah.
one fear on the planet.
Number one fear on the planet. And so, oh my God, he's talking to spirits, that can't be. People are afraid. And so over the centuries in some most cultures, but others like the Hindus are really cool about all this. They're like, communicating with spirits is part of your spiritual journey. So it depends on your faith background. But when you begin to look at it, first off, understanding the scriptural basis behind it, and then using 20th and even better 21st century science to understand the human brain in coupled with quantum physics, we're now seeing that there is a logical scientific explanation not only for the existence of a soul but for spirit communication.
Wow. All right. That's a great segue to go into a topic that I really wanted to get into you with because we started really going deep science here. And that's the electromagnetic soul theory that you have.
Yeah, the EMS, the electromagnetic soul theory, I developed that, and I'll run everyone through it really quickly. What does every faith teach us? That the soul, the spirit, the who and what we are, which in the realm of science is called consciousness. Okay, if you look at a neuroscience book, neuroscience is the field of science, the field of medicine that studies the human brain. And so let's say a neuroscience book is 600 pages and it's pretty much devoted to the structure of the brain and brain functions. You're lucky if you find a paragraph on consciousness, the who and what we are. So the official position, Lori, of neuroscience is that consciousness is created by chemical reactions and electrical impulses within the brain, which is a carbon-12 resonator floating in salt water, okay? Because your brain's full. That's why, when you're hungover and your head hurts, a large part of that is because you're dehydrated and the fluid around your brain is depleted and it hurts. So your body's saying, drink more water, drink more water. I'm not encouraging people to get drunk or hungover, but I'm just, explaining partly why that happens. All right. So we have this carbon-12 resonator with an electromagnetic field. Interestingly enough, the brain's 2% of the body's weight, yet it uses 20%, over 20% of its electricity. Back to faith. So every great belief system teaches us that the soul, the spirit, the who and what we are, which science calls consciousness, pre-exists the body, comes into the body, and moves on after the body dies. They all teach that. The laws of thermodynamics and physics, energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. Now starting to look like faith and science may not be so diametrically opposed. So after a lifetime of communicating with spirits, a career of studying the human brain, I started looking closer at quantum physics. We know everything is made of molecules, which in turn are made of atoms, which we know are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, which in turn are made of the smallest particle, which is a quantum. That's where we get the term quantum physics. A quantum or quantum is pure electromagnetic energy. Now, everything in the material universe, and Lori, that means you, your body, me, mine, the chairs we're sitting in, the microphones we're speaking into, radio waves that this program is being broadcast over, the network of satellites that is transmitting this program all around the globe, the rings of Saturn and beyond are all at the subatomic level made of the same form of electromagnetic energy, which is a quantum. And it's funny because people say, well, gosh, Mark, that's really hard to wrap my head around. It's like, you think? I mean, it did take Albert Einstein and Werner Heisenberg, Max Planck, Louis de Broglie, Niels Bohr to figure this out. Okay, so it took the greatest minds humanity has ever produced to figure this out. So combining work lifetime as a medium communicating with spirits, I developed the electromagnetic soul theory, which means that our soul, our spirit is pure consciousness, self-aware, which is eternal electromagnetic energy. Ergo, created before your body or exists before the body, comes in the body, moves on after the body. And in short, it's EMS, electromagnetic soul. And what's cool about the electromagnetic soul theory is it provides a basis not just for the existence of the soul, but also for an afterlife, spirit communication, all forms of spirit communication, which include reincarnation, near-death experiences, deathbed visions, and out-of-body experiences. Like you yourself, Lori, before we went on the program, you said that in the course of your life, while you have not had an NDE, you've been out of your body over 20 times, presumably
Yeah.
out-of-body experience. So in an OBE, out-of-body experience, what a disciplined practitioner of that, like yourself, you're able to project your EMS from your body energetically. It's still entangled, quantum entangled. That's a whole nother discussion. Quantum entangled with your body, but you're able to get to the frequency between what I call the afterlife frequency and our material world. So all of this is explainable through quantum physics and human physiology.
All right, I'm going to go one step further because you went into the realm where we talked about out-of-body experiences and that realm between the human and the spirit realm. So, Mark, I don't know if you've had experiences like this, and this is probably beyond what you talk to spirit about, because when I have had these out-of-body experiences, I have had a dissolved ego, where I am no longer any piece of my human form, and I have become the collective, which is the totality. And when I'm in that place, there's nothing about it that's human. There's no frequency, there's no power, there's no light, there's nothing that I can use in human terms to explain what that experience is like. And there's nothing outside of that place. So what would you say about that existence? Do you know anything about it? Have you worked with that at all?
I do indeed. I refer to the place that you went as the NDE zone, the near death experience zone. And that is you're between our material world dimension and the other side, the afterlife frequency dimension. There, think of our world as AM radio, the other side is FM radio, two distinct systems. All right. FM has much a higher vibration, AM lower, groovy baby vibration, but that's our world. And occasionally the two overlap. So you're in the overlap. Now, the reason you felt no ego is because the ego, and I call it, it stands for edging God out. The ego is created by the brain. The soul is not. The soul is pure energy. The soul is the source of universal love. Okay.
Yep.
The ego, think about like people talk about the devil. The devil's not some jerk with a pointy tail and a pitchfork running around sticking you with a, in the butt with a pitchfork trying to make you do bad things. The ego is created by your brain. Think about when you do something that's really mean to somebody else, really cruel. Were you acting out of love for that person and selflessness, or you
No,
act
you're acting out of your ego.
right,
Yeah.
complete ego. So what happens is when the EMS leaves the human body, what stays in the body is the organ of the brain and the ego. And so think of your EMS as a drop of water and it plunges into this vast sea of consciousness, which is the collective consciousness. And you're interconnected with other spirits that are connected with other spirits. That's why in spirit communication, a spirit can come through and present information that far exceeded the scope of anything that they knew here on planet Earth. All right. And that's why, like you said, well, there's no materialism, there's no ego, there's no thing. Well, of course there isn't. Why? Because our brain, and I'm not putting down the brain. The brain is a magnificent instrument, provided people choose to use it. um, but the brain is where our soul is housed while we're living in the material world. And the brain is designed for finite perception based on the stimuli and sensations received by our five physical senses of sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. So it's this finite device. And then once you're liberated of that, from that, well, you don't look in a linear or with peripheral vision. You're looking in 360 degrees observation. You have this knowing. There's no anxiety. There's this freedom and this sense of interconnectedness, being part of everything everywhere. It's just absolutely beautiful. Now, in saying this, and I think it's important that we say this, Lori, for people who are depressed, for people who feel that their life is worthless and they don't want to go on, neither Lori nor I are in any way encouraging anyone to cut your life short.
Of course
Okay.
not, because everybody I've interviewed who have tried to do that have been shown on the other side that was not the right decision.
Exactly. And so for everybody, I mean, a lot of people have suicidal thoughts, a lot of people get depressed. You're not alone. 988, call 988, the suicide prevention hotline. There are trained professionals there who care. That's why these people are doing this. They care. You are not alone. And yes, spirits always say, oh, the other side's so wonderful, but they also tell you, don't be in a rush to get here. You're going to get here when it is your appointed time to be here. And I believe, based on the thousands of readings that I've done, and the spirits tell me this, there's a day we're coming in and a day we're going out. It's what happens in between those 2 points that we have free will and choice over. So let's say that you think your life is terrible and you want to kill yourself, and instead you injure yourself horribly. Now you're paralyzed. Okay, you're still going to die at that future point that was predetermined, but you had the choice to harm yourself or to not. Okay, and if you don't believe me, talk to anybody that works in an emergency room or an intensive care unit, and they will tell you there are many people there who unsuccessfully tried to kill themselves. Um, and I'm not here to lecture or judge. What Lori and I do this because we care about humanity. And what I'm telling folks is everybody gets in that rut. I can't understand what your rut is because that's your existence and your perception. But please understand there are always people there who are ready, willing, and able and want to help. And it's a phone call, 988-988.
I'm glad you said all that. That's amazing. And hopefully that's helped some people. You know, one of the things you just kind of touched on, so I want to ask your perception of this since you have done so many readings. I have heard many times spirit on the other side communicate that for them, because there is no time, and here we have this linear time, for them, when they die, we may live 20 years after them, but for them, it feels like they saw us the day before and they're going to see us the next day. But for us, we have the 20 years. Will you speak to that a little bit? Because I think that that's a super comforting thought for the people who are left behind.
In Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity, he proposed that time as we know it does not exist and that it's happening all at the same time. Once again, this is hard to wrap your head around. In my book, The Afterlife Frequency, here's how I describe it. Think of your life as a baseball diamond, okay? And you're looking at it from a drone. So a drone is flying over the baseball diamond, and each player on the diamond is a different point of your life, okay? Let's say the catcher is when you're a little kid, first base is when you're in first grade, right field, a second base, shortstop, okay. And these are all different points in your life. Now, for you and me in the material world, we hit the ball and we run from home plate to first base and try to make it all the way around. So we perceive that life moves in one direction. But now your soul's the drone and you see all these different time frames happening simultaneously. These are called points in space time. And so on the quantum level, all this is happening at the same time so that time as we know it doesn't exist. So just what you said, Lori, someone you love dies. And even though you may live another 20 years, for that spirit in their reckoning, you'll be with them together when you cross over in less than a blink of an eye. So I hope that kind of helps people understand.
Perfect. Perfect. So what do the spirits in general really want us to understand? What do you think they communicate over and over and over again in all these readings?
Love.
Love.
God is love.
I think it's amazing because here we get to experience love, but on the other side, we are a state of being of love, which is very different.
It is. It is. Love is God. God is love. The most painful thing when someone you love dies is thinking that person disintegrated into nothingness.
Yeah, I agree.
Somebody that meant so much to you. And I do a lot of work with helping parents heal. And I know that you're well acquainted with that organization. And for all the parents out there who are listening who've lost children, Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization. Go to helpingparentsheal.org. Beautiful organization. And that's what they do. They help you cope, help you heal. And the thought that someone that was so precious to you ceases to exist, I think, is just terrifying. And spirit communication teaches you that it doesn't, that they don't, that they live on. And it's important too, and I wrote this in my first book, Never Letting Go, is the journey through grief is accepting the reality of that death, and through that acceptance, coming to a point of inner peace. Now, inner peace doesn't mean I'm all happy. It means you're beginning to be able to live with the loss. Also, it's understanding that the relationship that you had with the person who died didn't cease to exist, but rather it transforms from one of a physical nature to one of a spiritual nature. And yes, we all want the physical. Don't you want to hug your parents again? Don't you
Of
want to hug
course.
your kids again? Don't you want to
Yeah.
hug your lover, your partner, your spouse who
Your
died?
dog.
Your dog, okay? But we have to realize that while the physical does not exist anymore, because that's what's temporary, the EMS, the electromagnetic soul, energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. And when the EMS leaves the body, it is a coherent quantum field. In other words, when you die, you take you with you, okay? And so when you realize that your relationship has gone from one of a physical nature to one of a spiritual nature, oh, that makes all the difference in the world.
It does. Will you speak to the pets? Because people are so connected to their pets. And I think there's a fear, and you'll hear some people talk, oh, the mediums are like that. Pets have souls. No, they don't. There's just all this information. But I'll tell you, I lost my dog in January. She has sent me so many signs, like very specific, evidential, 2 or 3 things connected at one time, not just one thing where it's, you could slough it off as coincidence. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Animals have souls, and every living being does. It's been my experience that any being, any creature capable of the emotion of love is capable of spirit communication. And we get back to love. So if you had a pet snake or alligator and it doesn't come through
Not
your
as much, not so much.
I haven't connected with them. I mean, I've probably done close to 15,000 readings in my life and communicated with easily 250,000 spirits, because in each reading, several spirits come through. I've communicated with horses, dogs, cats, birds, rabbits, gerbils, hamsters, and even a bear one time, which was kind of cool. Kind of cool.
That's amazing. Well, I think that gives a lot of people hope, because there are people that sometimes wind up being closer to their family, their family members, their fur babies than to people sometimes, depending on the circumstance.
Yeah, animal communication is fascinating, and in my readings, there are some people who focus on animal communication, and if people want to find out about getting a reading with me, please go to my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com. I do one-on-ones. I like to focus particularly on your human spirits. Animals will pop in, and that's fine, but some people, they just want to talk to their dog. I may not be the guy for you. I would prefer to communicate with your human spirits, because a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I mean, I heard somebody once. She was very distraught. I was at a bookstore, and she said, My little girl just died. Her daughter." And some lady goes, "Oh, I know how you feel. My cat just died." Okay, with all due respect to pet owners, please don't put your animal on the same level as someone's child. The
Yeah.
appropriate thing for that woman to have said was, "I'm so sorry. Don't say that, your child's the same as my cat." And I know that that woman didn't mean to be rude or insulting,
Right.
but let me tell you, the parent of that child went ballistic, okay? And so that's one of the things on my website, afterlifefrequency.com. There's a page called grief management, and
Hmm.
it includes the things to say and the things not to say to people in grief. Okay. Somebody loses a child, don't say, "Well, you're young, you can have another child."
Oh, or just
Oh,
say, oh, just time. Ah, it's just time.
it's just
No.
time. You'll get over it. Oh,
Oh, no.
you'll meet somebody else if their spouse dies. Sometimes it's better just to say, "I don't know what to say. I'm just so sorry," and give them
Yeah.
a hug. Okay. Or say,
Yes.
"Look, I don't know what to do, but I'm here for you." Always saying, "I'm so sorry." One of the best things you could do is bring up a happy memory. I always liked your brother because he was so funny. I remember a friend of mine, his mom died, and I said to him, I go, I loved about your mom. She always made me feel so welcome. Every time I went to your house, she was just the nicest person in the world. That's what people need to hear. Celebrate, honor. don't say things like they're in a better place. All right, Lori, you and I know, yes, they are in a better place, but someone who just lost a loved one doesn't want to hear that, because what they think and feel, and rightly so, is that better place is here with them. Okay.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Or he
Yes.
brought it on himself, he drank too much. Oh, please,
Oh,
please avoid the judgments. And the thing is, people say stuff like that and they don't mean to be hurtful. They don't
right.
mean to be hurtful. So that's why I felt it was necessary to include that resource on my website, afterlifefrequency.com.
Look at all the good you're doing. I love it. I've loved this conversation. So I want to ask you just kind of a fun question. What if you can think of a time when you had somebody come across and gave you something evidentially that even you were like, I can't believe this.
You know, I'm so glad that you said that. I'm used to doing this for people, and it was about 2 weeks after my father died. Okay. And I was real close to my parents. Both my parents had mediumistic abilities, and my dad was just a really great guy. And I took care of him, as with my siblings, when he was passing from cancer. And about 2 weeks after that, a friend of mine, her name's Elaine Christine, and she's a spiritualist, and she does a lot of online events, and she had a group of people over to this house that she uses as a community center. And she highlights certain speakers, and she had a speaker there whose name was Yola. And Yola is just really wonderful. Yola, if you're listening, I love you. And and Elaine said Yola's gonna do some readings. Now, I had never met Yola before. She didn't know anything about me. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And she looked right at me and she said, I feel that there's a man in a uniform, looks like a Navy uniform, and he's holding up a genie's lamp. I almost fell out of the chair. My dad was a Navy SEAL, and my mother's name was Jeannie.
Come on.
And let me tell you, it's like, and
I just
also,
got goosebumps.
yeah, and also I'm going, oh my God, it's happening to me, because
So now you've got to put the shoe on and feel what it feels like for your clients.
and you know what? It felt really good. It felt really good because I'm
Good.
the one that usually does these things. And unfortunately, I got to repay the favor for Yola, because not long after that, her daughter passed. And
Oh,
it came to me, and I was able to deliver a message, but the thing is, something like that. Yes, I know that my dad was in spirit with my mom, but to get it from a third party that knew nothing about
yeah.
me.
And
Was
that's evidential. That's what we mean when we're saying evidential information, not a generic. There's somebody, an older lady around you, because we've probably all lost grandparents, but what a specific reference. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. Well, let's talk a little bit about your radio show, which is so fascinating because I think you do readings on that show too, correct? So
That is
people will
correct.
call in, get a little reading.
Every Thursday, the psychic and the doc. And once again, if people want to find out, go to the calendar of events on my website, theafterlifefrequency.com. The Psychic and the Doc. My co-host is Dr. Pat Basili. She's a world-renowned behavioral psychologist. She is the host of the long-running, continuously running, The Dr. Pat Show, and she's based out of Seattle. And she was on a Seattle's a big radio town. That's why I remember the TV show Frasier. It took place in
Yeah.
Seattle because Seattle is known for radio. It rains a lot there. People are always in traffic and they tune into radio. And we always used to joke, Dr. Pat, that she was the female Dr. Fraser Crane. Well, what happened was I was on a speaking tour in Seattle, and I was invited to be a guest on the Dr. Pat show. So there we are in the studio. And there was a woman that called in, and her son had recently died. And his spirit came through, and I delivered messages to her, and she was acknowledging them, and it was making sense. And then her son said through me to her, don't kill yourself, Mom. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And she broke down in tears and she said, I want to end it all. And then Dr. Pat chimed in and Dr. Pat got her talking. And then in between Dr. Pat and my spiritual connections, we got her hooked up with 988 suicide prevention. And then after the show, Dr. Pat followed up with her. So when we were done with that show, Dr. Pat and I and my manager Rocky, we sat down and we were drinking some iced tea. And Dr. Pat said, that was remarkable, the way the synergy there, and we really need to do something. And I said, I think so too. Well, then COVID hits about 6 months later, and Dr. Pat reaches out to us just as Rocky and I were talking, and she said, I have an idea. Let's do a show together. And so she said, let's call it The Psychic and the Doc, and we'll have people call in. So what happens is people call in, I'll do a mini reading, a brief reading, bring forth messages, and then Dr. Pat helps people understand what these mean. And she's, like I said, she's a behavioral psychologist. She's respected all over the world. We've been going 5 years now, and we've won Best Radio Show of the Year 2 years in a row now. 2 years.
Wow. Congratulations. All right, I have to ask you a
Thank
question about this. So do you think that that was a soul contract between you, the doc, and the lady who happened to be going through what she went through so that you could create something bigger than yourselves together?
I never really thought of it like that, but it makes synchronistic sense.
Sure does. It does to me. And so I think the reason I'm bringing this up is I think with hindsight, there are so many things that happen and we have no idea the ripple effect that we'll have on another. And I think that there are a lot of things that are prearranged because things are meant to happen. And I'm not saying you have free will. Obviously, we've already talked about that, but I do think that there are a lot of things. And so sometimes when we're in situations and we're thinking, boy, I wish X, Y, Z, or I want to meet somebody, or I want this job, I'm trying to do this, and it doesn't work out when it doesn't work out. There is a reason that we cannot see at the time. And later with hindsight, we'll be like, oh, I get it. This happened because of this and this and this. And I think that there's a web that is woven in and out amongst us that we all kind of contribute and help each other in certain ways. So I'd love for you to comment on that.
I think you nailed it 100%. I think that, before we went on air, Lori and I were talking about synchronicity. And
Yeah.
synchronicity, I think it was Carl Jung came up with the term synchronicity. There's no coincidences, but there's synchronicity. And synchronicity is when things fall into place, like you're in the right place at the right time. And unfortunately, there's the flip side of the karmic coin is sometimes you can be in the wrong place in the wrong time because that's what's supposed to happen. But let's focus on the positive.
Okay.
And some things just seem to fall into place. And I developed the term spiritual synchronicity because I believe in many instances spirits have a hand in this, and that young man who died needed to get a message to his mother and needed to get her, we Dr. Pat and I literally walked her off the ledge, and we're not patting ourselves on the back for that.
No.
We do this show and we don't get paid to do the show. We volunteer our time. People think when you're on radio, and Laura, you know this too. It's funny.
All the comments. Some people are like, oh, so many ads on your show. Like, I have nothing to do with the ads on my show.
And then the other thing is, you published a book. You just must be laying
Oh
there.
yeah. Unless you've written Harry Potter series, you're probably not paying your mortgage with these books that you've written.
Right. But your book is another way of putting yourself out there and being a resource to people as well.
And also sharing the great amount of detail that you couldn't get into a conversation like this.
Correct. And all of my books, I go very much into the science, but I illustrate them with stories. So I promise everybody, Reading my books is not like reading an algebra textbook. I promise you that. I suffered through too many boring books in the practice of law. I will not inflict that on you. I like to write my books like it's a novel. I want you to be there. I want you to feel it, what's going on. And the thing is, working with Dr. Pat is such a great honor. I was also very pleased on my journey, speaking of synchronicity, to meet Jana Short. Jana Short is the executive editor of Best Holistic Life magazine. And you know what the
Okay.
funny thing is, Lori? I can't even remember how I met Jana. It was on some online event. And she said, "Hey, I'm starting this magazine." And this too was right before COVID. And she said, "It's a quarterly online publication. Would you write for it?" All right. 5 years later, it's a monthly publication.
That's a
It's
big commitment.
in hard copy and online, and we have 2 million subscribers. And
Holy cow, in 5 years.
5 years, and Jana is a force of good in the world. She recently wrote a book called The Yet Factor, and it's about changing your thinking. Oh, I will never get a radio show. Let's take that statement. I'll never get a radio show, comma, yet. Okay, start changing it as I can't lose weight yet.
Yet.
All right. Start changing the thinking and then start doing it. Take that negative, what do they call it in the Marine Corps? Stinking thinking. Get that stinking thinking out of your head. So I haven't done this yet. Then you will do it. Start putting that together. And I'm very humbled and very honored that I was voted Visionary of the Year by Best Holistic Life magazine, and a special award edition just came out on June 15th. And if people want to find out, they did a long interview with me. And every month I write articles about spirituality, but all kinds of things. A lot of my adventures around the world. I wrote about, it's coming up in October. I wrote about, it's called New Angles on the Bermuda Triangle. And I talk
Oh, interesting.
yeah, scientists think they figured out. Plus, I had my own experience in the Bermuda Triangle, and that's just one of the things I've written about. Another one is called "Is Your Dream House a Haunted Nightmare?" And it's the legal repercussions of buying
Oh.
and selling a haunted property. Now, I'm also a paranormal investigator, and recently I was on Destinations of the Damned with Zach Bagans on the Discovery Channel, where they brought me in as a paranormal investigator, psychic medium, and because I'm a lawyer, to investigate the Indiana State Sanatorium where there was a supposed murder-suicide. Plus the fact this place is as creepy as it gets. I mean, it's decaying and all this. Hundreds of people died there under suspicious circumstances, and it makes certainly for good, suspenseful TV. But the thing is, I do write for Best Holistic Life magazine, and I look at that and the psychic and the doc, neither of which I get paid to do, as my ministry. And Dr.
I
Pat,
love it.
we're talking about this. We do the psychic and the doc. That's our ministry. People are like, well, you charge for readings. Well, then call into
You
the
have to make a living and buy some food.
yeah, yeah. It's funny when people, because of what we do, they think we have a gift from God. Because somebody said that to me one time. You have a gift from God. It should be for free. I go, well, what do you do? And she said, well, I work in customer service at, this big box store. I go, so you work with people and help them resolve their problems. I go, that's a gift from God. That's really great. She goes, I never thought of that. I go, give me your boss's number. She goes, why? So I can call him or her and say, because you have a gift from God, you're just going to work for free for the next 5 years. Well, I can't do that. I have bills. Really?
It's funny. My analogy of that is that people say this in the comments all the time. They get mad. Somebody has a course, somebody's selling a book, all these things. Oh, they should be doing it for free. Somebody complained. But what I have found over and over again is people like you do a lot of things for free. They'll do a lot of work that they don't even necessarily talk about because they're just giving it away. I don't know when the last time Mariah Carey was giving a free concert. Last I checked, I think her voice was probably from God, but she's allowed to make millions and millions of dollars and nobody says anything. Why in the world is it bad when somebody has a psychic gift that they get to do the same. I just will not understand that.
You know, I heard a story about Pablo Picasso, and it was not long before he died. This woman saw him in public, and she went up and she said, "Oh my God, I just love you. I love your work." And she had this little like notebook, and she said, "Could you just sketch something for me?" And he looked at her, and then he took it and he sketched something, and it took him about a minute or so. And she goes, "This is magnificent." And he took it from her. He goes, "That'll be $1 million, please." And she said, "What? It only took you a minute?" He says, "No, it has taken me 50 years to get to the point where I am able to do this." So people
Wow.
understand that whatever you do that is in the service of other people has value. People talk about, I wrote an article for Best Holistic Mom, Best Holistic Life. I think it was last year. It was called Mom, the Hardest Job in the World. Think
Second
about
that.
think about being a mom. Okay, first off, you're a mother, but then you're also a counselor, a medic, a chauffeur, a chef, an accountant. Okay, you've got, and it's 24/7. You don't get any vacation, and the pay is zilch. Yet it's the most important job in the world. And for dads, yes, you too. Okay, dad's got to do all those things. I mean, how often are moms underestimated? And I'll never forget when I was a young lawyer and I was working with this attorney. His name was Hardy. He's since passed. He was a great guy, and we were doing jury selection. And jury selection is at the beginning of the trial. That's before a jury's impaneled. You want to find out if there's any predispositions. And one of the questions, what do you do for a living? And it's like, I'm an engineer, I'm a plumber, I'm this. And there's this woman, and he says, "And ma'am, what do you do?" And she looked down and she said, "I'm just a housewife." And he said, "You mean you're a mother? That you work 24/7?" He goes, "You got the hardest job in the world." And it was that, and what he said to her, and he went down, "You're a chauffeur, a medic, a mechanic, a counselor." He went down the whole line, and you saw her go from, this hunched over, ashamed, to
I like it.
looking up and actually realizing somebody was validating her. And when Hardy died about 15 years ago, and I don't want to get into the circumstances of his passing, but he was still a relatively young man. Um, I thought about that, and I thought, what better way to honor my friend than to take what he said in court and write an article about it.
Beautiful. Mark, I have so enjoyed this conversation. You are an absolute wealth of knowledge and a delight to talk to. And you've shared, is there anything else that we want to share? These videos live in perpetuity. So I will say that we are filming this in June of 2025, just because you mentioned future state of things that are coming out in October, just so that people know. But give us the name or the web address where they can go to
Certainly.
really find out everything that you're doing.
I'm going to invite everyone to visit my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com. It's just like my last book, The Afterlife Frequency. And you can put in Afterlife Frequency or theafterlifefrequency.com. It'll go to the same site. And please, I invite you to sign up for my newsletter. You can go to the calendar of events, see what's coming up. I'm always on tour. In 2025, I'm coast to coast and back and forth. I do a lot of online events. You can schedule private readings with me. I do them phone sessions, and they're just as accurate as in person. I also do online light circles, limited to 6 people, so everybody gets a connection. You can find out about my books, my show, The Psychic and the Doc, and you can find out about all of that by visiting afterlifefrequency.com. So, Lori, I want to thank you so very much for having me on the show. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and for all the listeners, you got to keep tuning into Lori, man. She is such a great interviewer because you didn't ask me all the typical stuff people ask me. We got to have a really in-depth conversation, and I really appreciate that.
This is the highlight of my day. I feel like the luckiest person to be able to have conversations with people like you. And Mark, before we go, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for what you're doing to help wake up the collective consciousness. It is so needed right now.
Thank you.
And of course, this show is nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, listen, comment. I so appreciate you. Thank you for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.